Hello and welcome to another edition of Tech Bites with Ron Nutter. This time, due to a request I got on the website, we're going to walk through installing an antivirus package. Now, there are probably several different ones out there, but the one that I've had the most exposure to in Linux is something called Clamav. So what we're going to walk you through is just a very basic install to get you up and running. We'll schedule a scan, and then you'll be ready to go. Now, there are ways where you can do an on-access scan, but with the resources on the Raspberry Pi, that's not something I'm going to start at this point in the game, because if it's not properly configured, you can really eat up the resources on a processor. So we'll get it just up and running where you do have some degree of protection. So we'll get the ball rolling. We're already logged in, and we will make sure we've got the latest update available so that it knows the right packages and everything to go get. And it won't take it but just a minute here. And this is something probably is not a bad idea to do every time that you're installing a package that you think there may be a newer version on. This way, any dependencies that it may have, you'll make sure you've got the latest and greatest of everything. And it's just one less challenge that you're going to have to fight. Now, with anything, antivirus is just going to be one part of the solution. So you're going to have to make sure you've got your Raspberry Pi locked down, that everything is set up just exactly the way it needs to, that you don't have anything any more open than you have to. But I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. If you've dealt with networks with any degree of time like I have, you open the absolute bare minimum. Now, if you're playing in your home lab, it's a little bit different, but especially if you were to go to a production situation, you just have to take that extra step. So we'll be ready here in just a moment, and then we'll be able to proceed. Okay, now we've got all the latest file list down, so we're ready to go. So the next step we're going to do is actually to go get Clamav itself. So just like always, we'll do a sudo space apt-get space install space Clamav. And it's going to go through, read through all those lists that we just downloaded. It's going to make sure it flags all the dependencies that it's going to have. Proceeds to tell you everything that it's going to put in place. So we'll go ahead and select yes to get started, and it will start downloading everything it needs. And then once it's got that, it'll take through doing all the compiling and get things ready to go. And then once we're at that point, we'll be able to proceed to the next step, which will be actually getting our first set of signature updates. Now the process, you see it starting up at this point, something called Fresh Clam. This is the part that actually will help you manage getting the new signature updates. And those signature updates come out generally once a day, although sometimes, depending on what's going on, you may see them come out that much sooner. And that's one of the things, once we do a little bit of configuration, then we can actually automate that process. Okay, now everything has been set up. We're pretty much ready to go. Now, I'm actually going to make a mistake at this point to show you an error that you will see if you don't have everything prepared. So we'll go ahead and fire off Fresh Clam at this point so that we can try to do the first set of updates. And it's going to download a signature file. And the first time it does this, it's going to be a significant download. So it's, you'll have to allow a little bit of time, but then once it has its first update, then it will be just a matter of doing incrementals, just like the other antivirus packages that you're used to. Now, one of the things that I did do prior to getting this video started is I actually did go through Raspi config and set the time zone so that you would see the correct time for when this actually started. You get an idea of how long it's going to take and have some good benchmarks. I could have stopped this video and skipped on ahead, but as with several of the other videos that I've done, I felt it was very important to let you see the entire process start to beginning, because one of the comments I did get is from the time I first did one of the firewall videos until somebody who watched it did it, there was a change, but they saw from beginning to end that it had worked for me. So it wasn't just a case of maybe making some shorthand notes when I went to go write the post. I try to let you see things exactly the way that I've experienced them, so you have it at the very least a baseline to work from. While we're waiting for this process to complete, one of the things we'll be setting up next is actually the log file. Now, we should see some errors here very shortly because I didn't set that up in advance. So it's just basically a 3-step process to get it up and ready to go, and then we can rerun the process and you'll see what the log file will show in terms of entries, and get a rough feel for what you're looking at. Okay, now it's gotten the main database down. Now it's checking to see what daily updates have been released since the main signature file was last distributed. So we're going to be here just a little bit, and then we should be getting very close to doing the rest of what I wanted to show you in this video. Okay, well, from the first time I did this, the log file was not in place and it threw all sorts of errors. So apparently, since when I did this the other time, they have made a little bit of a change, and we'll go out and double check this. So If it has put the log file where it is supposed to, then we'll do a sudo tail var log clam av fresh clam .log. Okay, so it did fix the errors from the first time because this log file should not be there. So what you see is what it's recorded as far as what the download it did, signatures that were taken care of, where it got it from. So there's always a good log of what's going on. Now, if for some reason, if you would get some errors on the screen that would say error : can't open var / log / clamav / fresh clam.log in append mode, and it may say something about check permissions, what you'll want to do is do a sudo touch var log clamav fresh clam.log. And what the touch command does, if you're new to Linux, this actually creates a null file. It creates the entry out there in what you would think of as the file table, but it doesn't create any file size at all. But for those situations when the application itself doesn't understand how to do that, sometimes you have to help it along a little bit. Then the next thing you have to do is assign permissions to the file. Now, the next step is do sudo and chmod, and you're changing your file permissions. And what is suggested to do in the documentation is do 600. Now, to break things down a little bit, what 600 will do, it says the owner of the file, which in this case will be clamav, can read and write to the file. There's also an execute permissions, but you're not going to need to execute a log file. You're just going to need to read and write to it. So that's why we'll do a 600. If you want anybody to be able to see the file, you would do a 666 instead. And then we go / var log clamav / fresh clam.log. And that would be all that you'd have to do. Now, I talked about the owner of the file. So the last command will be a sudo chown, or chown, which would be change owner. And then we do clamav space / var / log / clamav fresh clam.log. And that would be all you'd have to do. But since this time that whatever the update has done since the last time I did this, that wasn't required, so that's even better, really. Now, there are two files that you'll want to be familiar with, and I'll just do an ls of the clamav, and you will see two files there, clamd and freshclam.conf. Now, as with anything, when you're first getting used to it, don't be feeling a rush that you've got to make a lot of changes. Now, we will take a look at one file, and this is where, depending on what you are doing in terms of logging, you may want to tweak things just a bit. We'll do a sudo nano etc clamav / fresh clam.conf. Now, one of the things that you may want to change if you've got some sort of syslog functionality running and you're actively parsing that file, you can change the log syslog option to be true instead of false. And what that really is going to do, from the testing that I've done on this, it's actually going to duplicate all the information you see going to freshclam.log and putting it in your syslog file. That's all that I've really seen done. With everything that you're going to see here and do some other digging, of course, you'll want to get the latest documentation down for the version of clamav that you're working with, and you'll go to www.clamav.net/doc/latest. There will be a PDF file there you can get, and you'll see all sorts of different options that you can go to. So that's one option you can do. Now, if you do make that change, you're going to need to restart the Clam AV service. So in that case, what you will do is do a sudo space service space Clam AV dash fresh Clam restart. And you see what it does right there. So it's pretty straightforward. Now there's one other step that we're going to need to take, and you can either have the Clam Scan service automatically start a scan at a certain time of the day. So you can either manually do that, or we can use the cron tab option to do that for us. Now, if you want to demonize fresh Clam, all you have to do is do a sudo space fresh Clam dash D, and that's going to demonize it. And that got ahead of myself there. So let's go ahead and set up the Clam Scan. So we will do a sudo space cron tab dash E, and it's setting up, basically you can see it's setting up a temp file. Now that will be explained here in just a minute. So we'll do a 00 space 00 space asterisk asterisk asterisk. Actually, I was doing spaces on all that. Sorry, I should have been a little more explicit. Space Clam Scan space dash R /. This is going to say it's once you basically at midnight every day, it's going to do a complete scan starting from the root of the system, the file system we just mentioned. So we'll do Control X just like we're used to. Yes, and we're going ahead and let it save out to that temporary file, and then cron tab itself will actually then copy it over, and then you're ready to go. Now, where I got ahead a little bit of the game is on fresh Clam. You can either demonize it, so do fresh Clam dash D, or if you want a little more granular control on it, then we'll go back into cron tab, and then we will go down here, and just like in the other entry, we will do a dash in, getting ahead of the game here. We'll do an entry similar like we did before with Clam Scan, except when we get out to the path, we will do a /USR /local /bin/ and sometimes I'll say slash when it's actually /, but you understand where I'm going. Fresh Clam space -- quiet. Now the quiet part is an important thing to remember once you can spell it correctly, and that will cause fresh Clam to run in the background. No prompts or anything will be on the screen, so which you don't necessarily want it to start overriding when you've got something else going on. And I'll just go ahead and say no, we won't make any changes. Now if you go to make some changes and you haven't made a backup of your config files, there's one way you can get it to recreate those files without having to uninstall and reinstall and maybe having to recreate your SD card, and that's do sudo space dkpg -reconfigure space clam av -base. And obviously I didn't type something right, and I see what I went and did, and it's translated a letter around here. So we'll fix that so it's depackage, and it's going to sit there and think for a little bit, and then it will actually come up with a process. So it's going to go through, and it assumes you haven't done any configuration. And that's pretty much it. You've got a working config at this point. Sorry the video is taking so long, but I wanted you to see the full timeline, and just that way you'll have a feel and a base for what it's going to take when you actually go through to do it. I've got several other things planned for Raspberry Pi. As with any of these, if you have anything you'd like me to walk through and do a video for you, so you kind of got a feel for what you're getting into, please get a hold of me via my website at www.ronnutter.com, and I'll be more than happy to do whatever I can to help you out, and then it will help others out in the meantime. So thank you for your time in watching the video and reading the post on the website.